and taken over the country by storm at a certain period of our history. Well, at first, when the music hit our shores, Cadence Calypso I'm referring to, I was still a young person, still at school, and I started hearing the songs from Seychellois groups who were playing either in the districts or in the hotels, and then later radio took it up. And the person, actually, I will take you to Perseverance to meet a Seychellois musicologist and Seychellois Creole musicologist, and his name is Mr. Norbert Roy Salomon. He's been in several Creole-speaking countries, made research on Creole music, proverbs.
Antigua, Haïti, Maurice.
Oui, aujourd'hui, nous ici, côté un grand musicologue, bien souligné, recherché, bonne tradition, la langue créole et la musique seychelloise.
Norbert Salomon, I'm a Creole music researcher.
Okay, Mr. Salomon, tell us your connection with Cadence Calypso and how you got to, how it has influenced the Seychellois music.
Well, it all started when I was in England in 1977. I met a guy from Guadeloupe, and he's the one who introduced them. One music to me. My first record was Akiato, L'Année de la Femme. The guy was living in France. Each time he came to London, he brought some new people. The second one I think was Pompidili, Atata, something like that.
So what happened? You had the album?
Yeah, when I've got that music, before I knew that music, I would listen to reggae music, you know, from the island. When you are in England, you stick to reggae music. But as soon as when I've got that music from my friend from La Guadeloupe, I fell in love with Creole music, Cadence music. And I passed it to some of my friends who were living in London. And I sent an album to my brother here in Seychelles. I think he's the one who spread it to the musician here on the island.
Exactly.
Understand the Creole language.
Yeah.
And the beat of the music was very fast. They liked that, the cowbell, the drumming, it was really good.
And you can see the influence of the cowbell in the segas that we have been producing here.
They introduced in our local music, the Sega music, until now they've got that style in our Sega music.
Okay. Yeah. I hope Mr. Salomon has given you an insight of how Cadence Calypso influenced Seychellois music, especially with the cowbell. Yes, I think there were several factors that influenced this music. One of them being Seychellois joie de vivre culture, have a joie de vivre culture. They like music, and this music was new in the sense it was very rhythmic. And the second factor would be the language. It was very understandable to sing in Creole, and they were listening and they could accompany like "Tout femme derrière on la vérité, tout femme," whatever. And yes, and you can see now in the Sega it's still being done. Now you have the cowbell, which is being played, you know, clap, 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 clap. So this is principally what I would call the influence on Seychelles music, yes. Well, I'm left to thank everyone, and I hope you have a good presentation and debate on this subject, and wish you all the very best. Once again, lots of love from the Seychelles.
Yeah. Okay, that was our friend Gilles Lyonnais from Seychelles, and before that we had Julien Mérion. I did it in the wrong order apparently. But just quickly for your information, Seychelles is an island archipelago in the Indian Ocean, north of Madagascar. And they have the same colonial history like us. They were colonized by the French and later by the English. So you find that in Seychelles you have actually 3 languages that are actually official languages: Creole, or French Creole, the English, and the French. So basically he was pinpointing some of the influences of Cadence Calypso on the popular dance music of Seychelles, which is called Sega. Of course, you can go on YouTube and discover a bit of Sega. And Julien Mérion, who is the head of Coreka in Guadeloupe, Coreka does quite a bit of cooperation work in Dominica. And he was making a very important point about the impact of Cadence Calypso in Guadeloupe, that when it exploded on the scene in Guadeloupe, it was really phenomenal. It brought the young and the old together. And another important point, that the Cadence Calypso, especially the lyrics, the themes that Cadence Calypso broached, were really a valorization, represented a valorization of the Creole culture and the Creole language. Okay, so I think this was a very critical point in Julien Mérion's presentation. Moving speedy along, we're going to invite McCarthy Marie, better known as Mark Marie, and he's going to focus on the impact of the recording by Exile One on a major international label and the impact of that. Yes, Mark, of course, I would really welcome that you be very economical with the length and duration. Right, so you have no more than 20 minutes.
Okay.
But 10 is okay.
Good evening, everyone. Australian I parle anglais. The first thing to say is that in the music business and the recording business, artists are not supposed to make money from selling records. That's how the business is designed. Therefore, when you sign with a major record label, which at the time Exile One was doing that, would have been somewhere about 6 or 7 companies. Right now, there are only 3 major record companies, and they make like more than 90% of the record in the world. They are multinational companies. So there's a Sony in South Africa, Sony in Nigeria, Sony in the United States, Sony in the United Kingdom. And there are only 3 of them. But at the time when Exile One signed the contract with Barclay Records, which is now part of the Universal Music Group, which is owned by a company that was involved in water business called Vivendi. So Barclay Records is part of that multinational record company, which is the largest one in the world, by the way. What it meant was that the record company sold your records as far as they could. So you got a lot of publicity from signing up with a major record label. They would provide a serious marketing campaigns for you. They would organize radio interviews with important radio stations, appearances in music magazines, get you on the cover, and that sort of thing. So they were able to put you on the largest platforms so that you personally, as an artist, could now be known by millions of people, which would then follow on with concerts in different places. So like Exile One's records, for example, were distributed in Colombia. They wouldn't manufacture the record in France and send it to Colombia. The thing that happened was there's a factory or distributor in Colombia, you sent the master tape to them, they manufactured in Colombia and sold in Colombia. Like Exile One, for example, his company had a deal with Byron Lee's company in Jamaica, who was selling Exile One records there. The West Indies Records Company, Wool rather, in Barbados made most of their money by manufacturing foreign records for sale in the Caribbean. That's how the business is organized. So Exile One was the first to do it. WCK was about to be the second to do it, but it didn't happen because I made the first record and I was in the middle of all of that, getting that done. They would have had a deal eventually with Virgin Records, which is part of UMG as well. It didn't happen. And the reason it didn't happen is exemplified by a phrase that I read in a report which a Trinidadian consultant did for a company here in Dominica. Dominica is a society of low trust. Nobody trusting anybody about anything. And in point of fact, more they don't know how you're going to thief them, more certain they are that you are doing it. And importantly, at the time when I was doing that, there was another person doing recordings up at Center Roma, Mr. Ken Robinson. He, in point of fact, was the first person who had a studio in a building set up like a studio. When I started doing recordings, I did them live, and I did like the first Calypso thing that was put on sale, myself and a guy called Radigan. Then we did the Girodel Jingping Band, which made Girodel Jingping Band for 2 years the most popular band in Dominica. And they tripled their price during the time, by the way. But with WCK, we didn't go further because of this question of low trust and, how shall we say, lack of understanding of how business in the music works. So that's what I would have to say. I don't want to go past my 10 minutes, but if you have further questions, I will be happy to answer them. Yeah? 20, oh, I have up to 20. Okay, well, I will just give an example of how, well, to use some technical term. The record business is a low margin business. In other words, you make a small amount of profit on each record. So the margin is small. So therefore, to make a lot of money, you need to sell a lot of records. And the way a standard record contract with a major record company is organized, essentially the record company lends you money to make the recordings. And if you want to put it like in banking terms, essentially they take the master recording as collateral against the loan. So when you sell records, you will have had an advance. That's one of the things the record company will give you. And against that advance, all your royalties would first be applied. And you would have said to recoup your record recouped. It recouped the advance that was made. If the record didn't recoup the advance, the standard practice was the record company wouldn't ask you to sell your car or your house to pay them back. That was the end of it. The only source of revenue they would get from you would be from the sale of your records and the royalties which would accrue to you. So very few people make a fairly large amounts of money which supports the entire rest of the structure of the people who are signed to the record label. And EMI is a company that's been there a very long time. It used to be called Decca when it started off. They made recording equipment, etc., etc. Then they got into records. And if you would remember, I'm sure Patrick will remember, we used to have light bulbs from, I'm trying to remember, they came from England, Thorn EMI light bulbs, if you remember that. Well, that was the record company that was part of Thorn EMI. And at one time, Thorn continued making these electrical stuff, and EMI became a record company by itself. And EMI eventually had to be sold. The publishing business was taken by Sony, and the recording business was taken by UMG. And they ended up in that situation basically by making a bad deal with one artist, Mariah Carey. They made a deal with her to pay her over a period of time $80 million, yes? And the record, she was used to be with Columbia. Matter of fact, she had even married Tom Mottola, who was at the time the president of Columbia Records and so on, which is now part of Sony Entertainment. But the deal was based on the idea, the first record, that that song was going to be in a movie. The movie was expected to be a big success. Therefore, if it's a big success as a movie, the music in it is also a big success. So a lot of the marketing and effort and expectation of revenue depended on how well the movie did. Unfortunately, the movie didn't do very well at all, which meant records did not sell. And eventually, they had to call her and say, okay, let's kind of finish with this contract here. We'll just pay you a sum of money and we'll be good friends, but we'll finish with that. And then a couple of years later, they couldn't keep up the business because the business keeps changing. And as I said, because it's a low margin business, you find there are few companies who dominate the recorded music business. And as I've said, they are now come down to only 3 major record companies. Sony Entertainment, or Sony Records as it's sometimes called. The UMG, Universal Music Group, which is where Barclays, which is the company that Gordon had signed with, is now located, and WEA, otherwise known as Warner Brothers. Yeah, so they are the 3 major record companies that exist in the world. At a lower level, you have what you might call independent, that they're not part of that multinational structure. And the multinational structure actually has their own trade association called the International Federation of the Phonographic Industry, which you can find on the internet, and you'll find lots of information about sales of records, how business has changed, etc., the number of money you make from streaming. And because streaming is now the way that the public consumes music. Yes, and I just read it tonight there, because I get a weekly update on what's happening in the music thing. UMG is expected to make about more than 10 billion US dollars this year, because their second quarter returns were over 3 billion. So the expectation is that over the next 2 quarters, the total should be in the region of $10 billion. YouTube is a bit of a new creature on the block in terms of the whole music thing. And they make about $3 million per hour in advertising. Lots of money. Yes, so in the music business, you are either very small, in which you operate in a small market and you try to sell within your market, or you become part of this huge machine that puts out these records, and now it's just recordings that are streamed over the internet, and you get payments according to the amount of streaming that's done. But in fact, the most profitable part of the music business is music publishing, which we don't have time to discuss tonight, but that's the most profitable part of the business. The sums of money involved in music publishing are actually smaller, but the expenses are also much smaller. Therefore, the profits tend to be larger than in the recorded music business. Okay, I think I'll stop here for now.
Yes, thank you, Mark Murray. Sticking to the time well tonight. Of course, the dynamics of the music industry has changed a lot, as Mark indicated, from the so-called Barclay days. And that is going to lead us straight into the topic of the next presenter, none other than Michael Henderson herself, who is well known and needs no really special introduction. Of course, she's a special person. Michael, Footy Bell, and all the things that go with Michael. So she's going to talk about the introduction of copyright and music publishing in the Dominica music space. So neatly, really flowing from Mark's concluding remarks. Yes, Michael. Round of applause.
Thank you.
Bad bravo.
Thank you very much. Do I need to stand or is it okay if I sit? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for inviting me. I was kind of shocked that Wadix chose this topic for me, given that Mr. Murray is so well versed in the area. But it was interesting to me because when I read through the topic and I thought that we've covered so much about the historical context of Cadence music, and we've explored all the influences that Cadence music has had across the world. We've seen with our own eyes and we've heard from presenters the power of Cadence music and its reach. And it occurred to me that we've sort of transitioned now from the historical aspect of it into what do we do next. And I decided to sort of focus on now as opposed to what happened back in the past. Because in truth and in fact, copyright and publishing were introduced to Dominica many, many years ago. Dominica was a colony of England. And so by virtue of that, we were party to the Berne Convention. It was in 1886. We ourselves as an independent nation acceded to that particular convention in 1999. So we've been introduced to the idea of intellectual property, copyright, publishing. We are also signatory to an agreement called TRIPS, if you've heard about it, 1995. You can also Google it. It basically deals with the aspects of trade where intellectual property is concerned amongst countries that are part of the WTO. And of course, in 2003, Dominica had its own Copyright Act enacted. So we've had a history of copyright here in Dominica, but I'm pretty sure if I ask the average person here today, what is copyright? Who is able to answer that question? No one? And that is what struck me, was that although it's been present, it's been there. We've had tons of discussions about it. Mr. Murray has been, to me, flogging a dead horse about it. We've talked about it so much. But still, people do not understand the concept of copyright. What is copyright? How does it affect the music industry that we are trying to build now? We've heard a lot about what we've done in the past. But how does it affect what we are doing now in our present dispensation? So I wanted to sort of talk a little bit, not too much, about what exactly copyright is in layman's terms, so that you, if the next person asks you about copyright, you can answer, the next person can answer. So this is my definition. I'm going to give you my own definition because I did it in small words, because I've looked up many definitions of copyright and it can seem complicated. For me, copyright is an umbrella term that's given to a bundle of rights that a creator has in relation to his original works. Okay? A bundle of rights. It's not just one right. The word said copyright, but it's really rights. And those rights include the right of reproduction. Mr. Murray spoke about the record companies making copies of your CDs. The right of reproduction is a copyright, meaning the person who created the work initially has the first right to decide whether a copy of it can be made. They can assign that right to someone else if they want to, like to a record company or to... Is that understood? The right of reproduction is the same way as if you make... you create a recipe that is unique to a product that you want to sell. Coca-Cola, for example. No one can duplicate that without your permission. Okay? So that's the first right. The right of public performance, where music is concerned, where all intellectual property is concerned. Right of public performance. So if I create a work, I'm going to stand a little bit. If I create a work, I have the right to say whether or not that work can be presented in public. I mean, that is understandable. Yeah, if you write a poem, you should be the one to decide whether or not someone else can recite it, where they recite it, when, and how. Then you have the right to produce a derivative work. That basically means that any other work that comes from your work. So I know we've seen a lot in our society of songs that are changed, tweaked, right. Unless you have the permission of the author of that work, you are not allowed to do that. That right belongs to the creator of the work. Okay? The right of distribution. So if I create a book, for example, it is my right to decide where that book is distributed, how many copies I make, who I give it to. So that is, all of you are creators, so you have to understand that that right belongs to you. There's a right of public display. So if I want to put that piece of music or my book, whatever I'm creating, out to the public just to show them that I've done it, that is my right. I also have the right not to do that. Public display. Right, exactly. Right of public performance through broadcasting. So the author has the right to say to a radio station, a broadcaster, or wherever, you can play this song or you cannot play this song. That right belongs to the author. It also applies to digital audio. So I know a lot of people feel like it's okay to just put things out on Facebook, on social media. You actually are usurping the right of the author when you do that. Okay? So these are rights. I wanted to make it simple because I see people nodding heads like we did not understand those concepts before. These are rights that belong to the author. Now the author has the right to assign those to someone else. They can do that. You can assign, not every right is assignable, but you can assign, you can pick and choose the rights you want to assign. You can assign rights to your record company. You can assign rights to your publisher. And what is a publisher? Does anybody know, apart from the panelists, because I think they know already? Can anybody define or know what the word publisher means? Not yet? Well, essentially, I'm going to give you a very succinct definition because it's a very complicated topic, as Mr. Murray explained. But a publisher is that person who has the resources and the means to make your work available to the public. So you might be an excellent creator, but unless you have the know-how and the connections to put yourself out there, your work is going to remain largely unknown. That is why publishers are essential to every creative industry. Unfortunately, here in Dominica, that is almost a foreign concept to us. A lot of us self-publish in that we make a song, when we put it out on YouTube, or we just post it on, and that's that, right? But essentially, the publisher serves a very, very, very important role, critical role. When you, the writer, have all your rights, you've created your work, you, in turn, approach a publisher and say, here is my work. That publisher sees the potential in that work. And the publisher will sign a deal with you. I'm going to get that work known out there, right? And for that, you will have to share something with the publisher, which I think is what something Mr. Murray was alluding to earlier, is that we have an issue with trust in Dominica. We have a feeling that we should keep it all, and we don't want to share. Well, I learned very early that 100% of nothing is nothing. 50% of something is better, isn't it? So now the publisher, and that is standard in the industry, the publisher will ask you for 50% share of your creation. Now the publisher needs that because the publisher, for him to be able to do all the things that he has to do with your work, he has to be part owner of the work. All these rights that I described to you earlier, the publisher needs to have those rights because he's going to have to authorize distribution. He's going to have to authorize certain things. So you're going to have to share a part of that work with a publisher. Generally, it's a 50-50 split. But some artists, very popular artists, mind you, have come up with this concept of self-publishing and allowing a publisher to administer their rights. So they create their own publishing companies. Beyonce has done this, for example, Beyonce Music. And all of her work belongs to Beyonce Music, so she has ownership rights. But Warner Chappell, which is her publishing company, is in charge of administering those rights for her. And for that, I'm not sure what their percentage is, but that's how it works, right, Mr. Murray? Make sure that I'm tracking. Right? So these two arms of the music industry are, in my opinion, these two most essential parts. Because you can have a wealth of creativity, and without these fundamental framework that allows you to generate economic return from that creativity, it is for naught, isn't it? So Dominica now, I feel we have suffered a lot in that these two pillars have been the weakest part of our music ecosystem. We have not educated ourselves, sensitized ourselves enough on the subjects of copyright and publishing. And so, of course, we have talent, and our talent can go far. I mean, just in recent times, we look at songs like Family and that have millions and millions of views. So our music has the ability to compete internationally. What we don't have here, unfortunately, is the framework that allows us to leverage our creativity to our economic benefit. And I feel it is more than time, because we have proven generation after generation from the 70s to now that we are able to compete. The success of many of the bands, the Exile Ones and the Grand Accent, is because they operated within those frameworks in the French islands of Guadeloupe and Martinique, and so they had well-established systems, okay? And so a lot of the companies there were able to leverage our talent to their benefit, not to ours. So in this current dispensation, in this time where we should be wiser. We shouldn't let the same thing happen to us again. So it should be our focus, in my mind, to educate ourselves on the subjects of copyright, educate ourselves on the need for publishers. I think there are only, so I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are only 2 music publishers I know of Dominican origin. That's Markov Studios or Markov Publishing, Mr. Marcus Murray is called? The publishing company. Markov Music Publishing and Gohen. Which Dominican artists are actually signed to your publishing company? And I was surprised to find out very few. You know, Mrs. Murray signed to her husband's company. Gordon is signed to his own company. Fitzroy is signed to Gordon's company. And so we have people with the tentacles out there into the international market, and we have not used them. We have not, again, it's a matter of trust. We have not understood the industry enough to say, okay, I have gotten my work this far. I know that I do not have the wherewithal to get it further. Let me look. Let me go out and seek people who have done it before, people who know how it's done, people who still have the connections to get it done, and let me allow them. Because you know why we don't want to do it? Because we don't want to share. We don't want to share. No, I've noticed this in our society, amongst our musicians. We feel like we want to own and grab everything. But the music industry doesn't work that way. The entire industry is based on sharing and the use of rights to make money. You can own all your rights. If they are sitting there at your home doing nothing, it is of no use to you, and it doesn't help the industry to grow. And that is what we're looking for in the industry. We're looking for growth. We're looking for economic growth. We are basically sitting on a gold mine and proud that we're sitting on the gold mine as opposed to actually mining the gold. Okay? So I don't want to be very long. I just wanted to sort of give people a general idea that copyright is not some esoteric thing that exists, you know, that only elite people can understand. It's actually a simple concept of you have rights. If you create something, you have rights. And those rights can bring you economic benefit if you know the right channels to get your work exploited. Exploited is not a bad word in the music industry. You want your work to be exploited, but you just want to be paid for it. It is that simple. The more people exploit your work, the better for you as a creator. As long as you have the framework in place so that that money comes back to you as a creator. So I'm admonishing and appealing to the artists in here, the people who are listening, future artists, to pay very close attention to copyright and publishing. Because these are the pillars, these are the foundations on which you can build a successful music career. Okay, hopefully this explains a bit. And thank you very much for having me.
Yes, thank you very much, Michael, for your presentation. And again, reinforcing the point of the importance of music publishing and the set of new revenue streams that would derive from those aspects of the music industry. So we're moving very quickly on tonight, very efficiently for our time, I must say. You know, we have some performances lined up towards the end, but we're going to go to another video, pre-recorded video. This time we're going to look at the Cadence bouillon. Yes? Sorry? Sobers? Did I miss somebody? No, Sobers is going to go after. We're going to look at the video of Cornell Phillip. from Cadence to Bouillon.
Hello and good evening. Hello and good evening. It's an honor being here tonight to do this presentation, you know. When Wadix first approached me a couple months ago, I mean, I obviously said yes for many reasons. First of all, it's Wadix. Secondly, it really gave me an opportunity to express a couple of things that I've been saying for a while. And, you know, just being on this platform, I feel that it can reach to the people I think that matter. You know, not only us in here, but the wider, you know, the wider audiences on social media and stuff like that. And even something that can be documented, you know. Wadix approached me on really discussing the differences or the similarities between bouillon music and Cadence music. Very, very interesting topic, I must say. But when I thought about it, it goes deeper than just bouillon or Cadence. I mean, I will just keep it at Caribbean, you know, and this is the reason that I would name this presentation. My presentation tonight is called We Are All the Same. You know, we all the same. When it comes to our music, whether it be Cadence, whether it be bouillon, whether it be zouk, you know, whether it be compa, it be calypso, jab jab from Grenada, ring bang from Barbados, Dennery segment from St. Lucia, or even soca. When you really think of it, or when I really dig deep down into the roots of the rhythmic patterns and stuff like that, honestly, we're all the same. And that is what my presentation is about tonight. You know, so if you bear with me, I'm going to do something that can really show you what it is or where I am coming from when I say we're all the same. All right, so on the screen I've put up a timeline with a 2-bar loop, you know, and I'm going to show you, prove to you where we are so similar, why we are so similar, you know, and it comes to it brings up certain concerns and certain facts, you know, like some people tend to think that this song may be a bouillon song, or no, it's a Cadence song, or a zouk, and such and such and such. But because of the similarities, I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to the artist to tell you what this song is. Because a song may sound like zouk to you, but the origin, which is in the mind of the producer, maybe Cadence, you know, so they're so similar, you know, but I will explain to you. Okay, first of all, what you see on top here, right here, is what I call the pulse. So I'm going to start the sequence right now. So this is a basic pulse, you know, so you can, that is what you move left to right with. We're gonna be dancing here, okay? So you can tap your feet, you nod your head or whatever. Okay, so this is what I call the pulse of the music. All right, next we can go to what I call the rhythm of the music. All right, so these two elements, the pulse and the rhythm, is what I'm going to base everything that I have said here tonight. These two elements, the pulse and the rhythm. Okay, so we have doop, 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 all right? And then we have a, okay? So I'm going to replace this right now with a kick drum. So that is the pulse. I'm going to take out, okay? Next, I am going to put, seeing that is a Cadence forum, I'm going to put in the Cadence hi-hat. Okay, I'm going to take out the pulse. the rhythm, sorry. All right. Now, if you notice, I've replaced the wood block, which was the pulse and the rhythm. I've replaced it with a kick and a hi-hat, a Cadence hi-hat. All right, I'm going to put them back in so you can hear. Exactly the same. Right? Exactly the same. Now I'm going to go back to the hi-hat. I'm going to put in a zouk hi-hat over the Cadence hi-hat. All right. So this is the zouk hi-hat, basic zouk hi-hat. Now you notice that is the zouk hi-hat. I am going to put in the Cadence hi-hat over it, and you notice they all end up at the same, in the same time, same part of the timeline. Right? The kick continues. Right? Now zouk went there. Now there are alternatives. So to make it a little more rhythmic, which is something that was also done in Cadence music, something like this. Like you hear that little in between pulse in the hi-hat, tack, 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 goes to tack, to tack, to tack, tack, to tack, to tack. All right. So that is something that was put in. Now, if you notice, it falls in the same rhythmic part of the music. All right. Now I'm going to go back to the Cadence hi-hats, and now we go. Well, yes, I'll go back to the Cadence hi-hats, and now we're going to go to the snare drum. Right. Now hear this. That is a basic soca hi-hat, snare drum, right? If you notice, it falls in the same timing as the Cadence or the zouk hi-hat, right? Something I should also mention is that, let me take out the snare and the side stick. Same as the hi-hat, very same as the hi-hat. All right, so I'm going to go back to the snare. Okay, very same timing as the hi-hat is the snare. I'm going to go to a variation of the snare, which is exactly every note of the snare is a hit of the Cadence hi-hat, and that is soca music. All right. Now, going to another. You understand? Now, I am using soca to, probably you're saying I should be saying, I'm making the distinction between Bouillon and Cadence. But I know Bouillon is already Dominican. Right, so I want to take it further because I don't have much time. So I take it out of Dominica and I'm bringing it right down to Trinidad. Even if soca is said to have come from Dominica, right? So I'm just letting you all see the relationship, because I mean I can do bouillon right here. You know, it has the same rhythmic pattern as the Cadence hi-hat. All right, but I want to take it further to out of Dominica to really show, to give an example of what is going on, why I say that we are all the same when it comes to music in the Caribbean. You know, now I was here, right? These are rhythms that you find in all the genres of the Caribbean. You know, there are genres that are like reggae. Reggae is in a class by itself. That is another discussion. But I cannot take reggae and do the same thing, make it like overlay it and say, speak of the similarities. It is much, much, much different. All right. So you have differences. You have alternatives with the snare drum now. Okay. You know, so that is rhythmic. All that is rhythmic, and they all coincide with each other to create the general feel and the mood of the song. Okay, I'm going to do another. Okay, exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. Another one. You know, and that is what Burning Flames uses. You know, that is what they are famous for, that kind of beat. You understand? Now I'm going to bring in the cowbell. You see, everything is still in there. Everything is still gelling. You know, no matter what, they still gel it. You can imagine if I put a disco beat over that, it wouldn't gel. But all these different rhythmic variations of the different genres, they're all the same. Denry, the Denry segment, they concentrate on the rim shot and the hi-hat, where it is loud. But in Cadence music, there's no rim shot. There's the hi-hat. Right after came the plates on the crash, the muted crash. You know, so, but all of them are the same. The soca is the same, everything is the same. I'm going to put in the floor tom. Boom, boom. You understand? I'm going to put all of them, every single one of them together, and hear what happens. You understand? It's the same. It's all the same. Right? Now something else that I'm going to show you now is the rhythmic, the pitched instruments, the rhythm section, like the organ and the guitar. There's something that I always say, that the pitched instruments have to go together with the percussive instruments to create the rhythm section. All right, so let's say we're going to rhythm a song, a calypso. Some of us saying that's Cadence. It is Cadence, just like it is calypso. Alright, I can remember Fitzroy telling me that that's something that they used to do way back in Cadence music. You understand? So that when for the piano rhythm now, you're same thing. Now, something I want you all to pay attention to is when I change the chords with what I'm singing. You notice where the chord changes? That is one way of playing the rhythm. Right? That's playing it on the beat. There's also something that I call anticipate. Right? Well, I shouldn't say I call. I think I got that from Fitzroy too. I call anticipate, or we call it anticipate, right? When we play it. So Bob would come in the studio, for instance, or Chad, guys who I work with on the guitar, and they would be playing. And I'll tell them, no, I want you to anticipate. And then we would end up with this. So you notice we actually changed the chord before the start of the beat. You understand? So let me see if I can do it for you. The straight. Anticipate. 3, We all the same. We all the same. Okay, now let me stop this here right now. There are certain things that determine the genre of the music. And in my years of producing, I've realized that is what we put the focus on. You understand? Because I have played all these genres, and I have put in every single element of every genre in every genre of Caribbean music. All right? Now, if I'm doing a Zouk song, right, I would focus my rhythm section on probably, most likely, the rhythm guitar, the hi-hat, and the rim shot. Right? If I'm doing a Cadence song, I will focus my rhythm section on the hi-hat, the side stick or the rim shot goes out of the window with Cadence, right? The guitar would remain. I would now add an organ. You understand? They would probably play the same thing if it was a Zouk as opposed to a Cadence. They would probably play the same thing or the same kind of pattern, but is where the focus is on the beat. You understand? The rim shot is gone on the, what you call it, the rim shot is gone in the Cadence music, but it remains in the Zouk music. It has to be heard. It will be brought up. When it is taken off for the Cadence music, the hi-hat takes the place, so it has to be more accentuated in the hi-hat. The cowbell is the same thing, you know, and I must bring up another alternate rhythm section, which was Bell's combo was famous for that. That is calypso, or that is what we say is calypso. It is also Cadence. Bell's combo have been doing that for a while now. Halia's song, Long Tongue. Long Tongue. Rush their tongue. You understand? And it's the same rhythm section that is behind there, you know, filling up the rhythmic bed of the music. All right, so again, we are all the same. You know, what makes Zouk Zouk, what makes Cadence Cadence, what makes Bouyo Bouyo is the focus on the instrumentation. But the rhythm, the rhythmic section is basically the same. All right. There's something else that I should mention. Calypso, we all know Calypso to be social commentary, right? Or that's where it came from, social commentary. Cadence is also social commentary. Bouyo can be, well, it is also social commentary. But with all these three genres that I have mentioned, they also have that party vibe, right? Now, when we if we are producing a song and it's for a party, the fact that we're doing a party song, it determines. Now, if I'm doing a soca song, I will try my best to stay away from the minor chords. Sometimes they come in, they have their place, yes, but my first thing is go major chords because it's a happy chord. I'm doing a soca, I'm doing a bouyo, I'm doing